You know that feeling when everything is going really well and it is just flowing along and it's a joy and a delight. So I'm thinking, how can we get more of this into our lives? But before I carry on, if you don't know who I am, I'm Becky, the founder and creative director of the homeware brand Shea Becky, and I believe the kitchen is the heart of the home. And today I am really excited to be interviewing the lovely Rebecca Held, who's all about bringing the human back into leadership and thriving. Rebecca is a resilient individual who has turned life's challenges into a source of inspiration and purpose. Her journey, woven with threads of childhood trauma, anorexia, and domestic abuse, is a testament to the transformative power of personal growth and healing. In navigating her own struggles, Rebecca found strength in embracing the journey with authenticity and vulnerability. Her heart, set not on merely surviving, but thriving, became a guiding force for turning past wounds into wisdom. In a turn of events that reads like a heartwarming story, Rebecca translated her resilience into the foundation of a thriving business. Picture a workplace as warm and supportive as a close-knit community. She founded a venture committed to fostering environments where well-being and positivity are at the forefront. Inspired by personal experiences, Rebecca developed programs that not only addressed challenges, but also infused enthusiasm, understanding, and a genuine human touch. Today, her leadership and well-being business stands as a beacon of hope, illustrating the transformative journey from adversity to collective healing. Through her groundbreaking dedication, Rebecca is not only rewriting her own narrative, but also extending an open invitation for others to join in the journey towards personal and collective well-being. So thank you so much for being here today, Rebecca. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you. I mean, who is that Rebecca you've just talked about? Sorry. You know, when you hear people talk about yourself and you're thinking, well, yeah, it's true, but own it.
Absolutely, own it, absolutely. And it feels like to me that you're a person that really embraces this idea that one can continually evolve and grow as a person. Is that right?
Absolutely. And I think that we always are. I mean, I've always, from a very young age, well, from probably from the minute I was born, I think we all are in a certain extent, you know, I've always been very curious. I've always been, you know, wanting to learn, to grow, to develop, and to better myself. But I guess that kind of got a little bit lost and the lines got a little bit blurred along the way with, obviously, you know, experiences, trauma that most of us, all of us apparently actually, you know, do experience.
Yeah.
But I do think we are all born with this thirst to constantly grow and evolve and develop. You look at children, how curious they are, how much they want to learn, how much they are not afraid of failure. And then as we get older, we just get more and more conditioned. We have more and more experiences that close us down.
Yeah.
And an ego then will play a part. But for me, you know, we should always be continually growing, evolving, and be honest with ourselves on that journey. Because I see from a lot of people will say, yeah, of course, we're always learning, we're always growing. And then they've got a very closed or a very fixed mindset. And they're not open to other ideas or other ways of thinking or other ways of looking at themselves. So yeah, very long-winded way of answering that, but I do, you know, I mean, you look, we're always learning new things, we're evolving, you know, constantly, you know, generation after generation. There's, you know, so yeah, I do massively believe in that.
Brilliant. Yeah. So, is there any way of actually you know, when you do start to feel a bit stuck, you can start to feel a bit like, I don't know, like you can see things are repeating themselves and you don't know how to make that shift. Have you got any sort of, you know, like techniques or things that you know, how to sort of just shift that, reframe something so that you can see it in a different way?
It depends, obviously, but there are, you know, obviously various techniques. For me, I think the first thing that we need to do is really kind of take a moment, create some space, and think, okay, if you're feeling like you're stuck, or, you know, you're not moving forward, then something doesn't feel in alignment, does it?
Yeah.
We always need to stop and think, okay, what am I doing that makes me feel good? What am I doing that doesn't make me feel good? Now, anything that doesn't make me feel good, because at the end of the day, we have a choice, okay? We have a choice over which thought, which direction we're going to go in, and that will always impact on our feelings. So it's like, okay, so what's going well? What doesn't feel right? And that, you know, and I say this from someone who has been in that place where they were terrified to do the thing that they knew was right. You know, I stayed stuck in a toxic marriage. I stayed stuck in very toxic, you know, relationships with other people, in, you know, without going too much into it. But, you know, there are times when we just become so afraid of that because we've lost touch with who we are, and we don't own or validate our own feelings. So first of all, it's about figuring out what makes me feel good, what doesn't make me feel good. So the things that make me feel good, I need to focus more on them. The things that don't make me feel so good, I need to kind of, you know, have some discipline. It's about discipline as well, you know. But then, of course, we can always reframe things. So once we've done that, you know, kind of reflection, and this doesn't just happen overnight. If you're really stuck in a rut, you know, it took me years. I went from, I mean, you know, we'll go into some of the other stuff later on, but I went from knowing I had to walk away from my marriage to not actually doing it for another 5 or 6 years. Yeah, because it was like, right, I need to figure this out. And that took meditation, it took journaling, it took being honest with myself, it took really unpicking some of the limiting beliefs that I had, and then reframing them, just changing the language that we use with ourselves internally. Like, why? You know, there is a lot to be said, you know, oh, I'm useless, oh, I'm rubbish. You know, when you say that, you're going to start believing that. You know, don't even give that thought space. Move on to the other thought that feels better. Actually, you know, maybe that didn't go right, but it was a learning experience. It was an opportunity to grow. It was an opportunity to learn. I was talking to the owner of a business locally yesterday, and he was talking about, I mean, I wish more businesses would do this, but he was talking about how he's creating this culture where it's okay to get things wrong, because that's the only way that we're going to evolve. That's the only way that we're going to, you know, advance, you know, we're going to be creative, we're going to, you know, be innovative, is if we're actually making mistakes and learning from them, because otherwise we're just going to keep doing the same old thing over and over again. And, you know, and like I say, stay stuck in that place where it doesn't feel so good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, changing this idea that you can't, successful, I always had the idea that successful people didn't get things wrong. But that isn't true, is it? That is.
But that's because that's what we're taught as children. That's what we're taught in the education system, you know, and I'm very mindful of that as a parent, sorry, but you know, and I wouldn't say, you know, I knew this is straight away, of course, but like, you know, especially with my youngest boy now, it's constantly, if I make up, with both of them, to be fair, if I make a mistake, I will own it.
Yeah.
If I do something wrong, I like, you know, we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, you have to listen to me because I'm your mother, and, you know, and I know, you know, I have to put boundaries in place, but also know that, you know, to be successful, they see their mum and they see that someone who has built a career, has, you know, bought a house, kept a roof over their head, just, you know, they see a strong woman, and they need to know that that strong woman has made a hell of a lot of mistakes to get to that place. So I'm always really, really open and honest with my kids, because, sorry, you know, I think it's from a very young age that we learn, oh, you know, if we're going to, you know, we can only be successful if we don't get it wrong. Absolute rubbish. The most successful people have got it wrong several times.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. So it's about relearning that, isn't it? No, that's fabulous. And I'm also very interested to know that you mentioned that you've had anorexia in the past. And you know, for me at Christmas time, food plays quite a big part in Christmas, and I love food, and all of the adverts you see quite often very food focused. Does this make it quite a difficult time of year for you now, or maybe was it in the past?
Obviously, when I was battling with anorexia, yeah, it was horrendous. You
Yeah.
know, I hated anything. I hated birthdays, I hated Christmas, I hated Easter, because it was like, how am I gonna, hide this? I mean, obviously everybody knew really, but how am I gonna navigate this? What am I gonna do? What am I gonna have to do to compensate for eating on Christmas Day or Boxing Day or whatever? It was awful. And it caused a lot of stress. I'd end up really poorly over Christmas. And it's such a shame when I look back. It really, really is. And even in the early years of having my kids, because I will be honest, I was still, especially when I had my first, he's 13 now, I mean, there's not a chance. I always talk about recovery, and I always talk about how sometimes, I think in early stages of recovery, you can almost convince yourself that you're recovering when you're not. But anyway, I wasn't, after I had my first son, I wasn't. And so, yeah, Christmases were so difficult. But I think now it's amazing. It's amazing because I appreciate now so much more the joy and the pleasure that Christmas brings. And I feel like, I've got a much healthier approach to it that my kids see. I don't not let them have certain foods because it's, until Christmas Day, or there's a great build up. We've already started buying panettones and all sorts of things in our house because it's such, it's a time when food needs to be celebrated. And I think there are so many people that might not be struggling with an eating disorder, but might be struggling with some kind of disordered eating. And so they're finding kind of Christmas and the build up to Christmas difficult. And I would say there are a lot of people, whether they admit it or not, and don't always see, because it's become so socially acceptable to cut back, to eat clean, to refrain from certain things. Oh, I can't let myself have that. Oh, I can't, and it's like, it's acceptable. No, it's not, it's not.
Yeah.
And so I will say that, one point I do want to make is that whilst I'm sorry, and I've had this debate so many times in the past, but you can you can make a full recovery from an eating disorder. You can, I'm testament to that. But that does not mean, a full recovery does not mean that you never get those negative thoughts. It doesn't mean that you're not affected by social media, by body image, by those foods that are around you. But the difference is you don't act on it. And you can see that all of those thoughts are because of a way that you've been conditioned, not because it's bad or because of who you are. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but, I think, and I'll say that every year it gets easier, because every year I'm learning some more. Every year I'm that little bit older. Every year I am understanding my body and how it works better, because that's another thing. So many people get stuck in the trap of thinking they can't eat this or they've got to compensate for that because they think that they can have this kind of micromanage effect. They can micromanage their weight and their body and their mind, and it just doesn't work like that. And but we've become so disconnected. We've become so disconnected, from what our bodies are telling us, from how they work. And as that happens, we also become quite emotionally kind of distant from ourselves as well.
Yes, yeah, no, our bodies are incredible, aren't they? And we forget that sometimes, I think. A few years ago.
We have to let our bodies guide us.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And if we, like you were saying, maybe get quiet for a bit and, see how we're doing, then, our bodies will tell us what we need. Yeah.
And I think, just to make a point there as well, that I think, and a lot of women that I coached in the early days of the business found this. We think, right, over Christmas, we all overindulge. It's normal. Our weight is not supposed to stay the same all 365 days a year. It's normal to, gain a few pounds over the festive period. And if you allow yourself, and you might, even when you have got a healthy relationship with food, your weight is supposed to fluctuate within a range. It's never supposed to stay. And that range is like 10 to 12 pounds. It's not 2 to 3 pounds. But, you know, what we tend to do is we'll feel really sluggish because we've really enjoyed the festive season, or have we? Because we've probably had that diet talk in our mind the whole time. But anyway, and then we felt, right, we've got to go on a diet. Got to go on a diet because I don't trust myself. Whereas actually, you know, you've overindulged. Our bodies love homeostasis. They don't like us to overindulge for too long. So if you've overindulged over the festive periods, you've gained a few pounds, your body knows that you've got those extra pounds. It is going to automatically, you know, dial back your appetite. It's going to automatically want you to move a little bit more. You know, if you just let it happen, rather than having to go on another diet, it will happen naturally. Whereas if you go on a diet, you end up restricting, you end up feeling miserable, you end up feeling terrible, and then you just go round and round in circles again. Whereas if you just let your body go through the natural process, it will all happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So now you mentioned panettone. Is that something that you have a lot in your house?
We love panettone. We do. And we love, although I'm a little bit more experimentative with it than the kids. Well, I say that we love different ones. Like we just got a really lovely Christmas tree one, and what breaks my heart is like, because my family are Italian, so when we're in Italy, panettone is always available, and you have like rows and aisles full of different panettone, whereas in this country I can go into a shop and can't find it anywhere. So whenever we find it, like all year round, can we get some panettone? It's not November yet, babe. It's not November yet. So yeah, but I've never made it myself. Never made it myself. So maybe that's something I need to do.
Well, there we go. There's a challenge for yourself if you fancy. But, you know, I don't know. Sometimes there's nothing wrong with going and buying something lovely like that ready-made, is there?
Well, it's amazing because the UK are kind of catching up with, because obviously traditional panettone has like all the dried fruits and stuff in it, which my kids hate, so we always have to go for the plain one. But no, for me as well, it kind of, or the plain or the chocolate chip, or you know, they like all those ones. I found a nice Bellini one from Marks and Spencer's. That was cool. There's a tiramisu one as well, but I have to be careful because I go, oh, that's really nice, and then I end up with a whole one to myself if the kids don't like it. But it always like brings back, because this is the other thing, you know, Christmas is about memories. And for me, panettone always reminds me of being at my grandparents at Christmas, because that's what we ate, you know?
Yeah, yes. Now, Rebecca, I believe you have a podcast called Held Approach Podcast. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's the Healed Approach podcast. And yes, so I started that only a couple of months ago, actually. And I started it as a platform to talk about leadership, and leadership from a more human-centered element. Because I do think that, you know, people are, yeah, leadership is still very much kind of, you know, in its masculine energy. And I think, you know, we need to be talking more about how we can develop empathy and resilience, etc. So I set the podcast up to do that. And then I went to bed one night, and it was literally just as I was about to kind of record my first episodes. And I was like, do you know what? I really want to give this a platform for women. Because as a woman who has, you know, navigated a career in educational leadership before starting my own business, I was like, you know, I've come across challenges, and I have not really believed in myself, and you know, and I've you know, there have been real struggles, and I don't feel like I've really been heard. So I'm going to go out there, and I'm going to ask for female leaders, female entrepreneurs. You know, we're going to talk, and we don't just talk about that on the podcast, but I just thought it's a platform to have those conversations. Well, I was inundated, absolutely inundated by, you know, women who, you know, want to come and talk on my podcast. It's been amazing, because I just, for ages, I put off doing a podcast, because like, what on earth am I going to talk about? And who the hell would want to come on my podcast? But already in the space of 2 months, I think it is, maybe a little bit longer, I've recorded 50 odd episodes. I've got quite a lot still in. I'm getting people emailing me all the time saying, you know, I've heard your podcast, can I come on? So it's been amazing. It's been absolutely amazing. And it's been amazing for me as well to connect with so many like-minded people, because I think we can forget to do that. And, you know, particularly as women as well, we kind of get stuck in our lane. And we kind of forget that there are people out there that, you know, really want to do the same thing as us. So yeah, that's what it's all about. And it's called The Healed Approach. And I think it's on Spotify, it's on Apple, it's on, you know, or whatever podcast programs.
Great. Well, we'll put some links underneath so people can pop over and listen to it. Yeah, brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, Rebecca, that's great. Thank you so much for being here today. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
You're very welcome, and have a lovely Christmas.
You too.